Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tackling something that quietly eats away at profitability every single day: the hidden financial impact of machine stoppages. Most plant managers can easily tell you that a particular machine was down for 6 hours. But if you ask them what that actually costs the company, well, you usually just get a shrug and a rough rounded guess. We're going to move past that guesswork today. We'll be walking through a robust 4-part formula derived from ManWinWin's Downtime Cost Calculator to help you put a real, defensible number on lost production.
Let's jump right in and look at the sheer scale of the problem. According to the Siemens True Cost of Downtime 2024 report, unplanned downtime now costs the world's 500 largest manufacturers a combined $1.4 trillion every single year. Yeah, trillion, with a T. It is a staggering figure that really highlights just how critical this issue is on a macroeconomic scale.
But let's bring that down from the global economy to your actual plant floor. Independent research puts the average manufacturing downtime cost at roughly $260,000 per hour across all sectors. Now, obviously, depending on your industry, your mileage is going to vary. That range goes from about $10,000 an hour for light assembly operations all the way up to well over $2 million an hour for complex automotive and semiconductor lines.
And here is where things get really interesting. Over the last 5 years, this cost jumped from 8% to 11% of total revenue. But get this, it wasn't caused by more downtime incidents. In fact, reported incidents actually fell. The costs rose because each hour of downtime today carries significantly more hidden, secondary costs than it used to.
And honestly, that brings us right to the root of the problem. If you go ask 10 maintenance managers what an hour of downtime costs their line, you're going to get 10 completely different answers. And let's be real, most of them will be complete guesses. Why? Because downtime costs are scattered across completely different departments. Production is tracking the lost units, finance is looking at the margin, HR has the overtime, and literally nobody owns the total. As a result, fewer than a quarter of manufacturers actually track this figure with any real precision.
Part 1. The 4-part downtime formula.
So, how do we fix this guessing game? We need a standardized method. Because if you get this calculation wrong, you're either going to underfund your own maintenance teams, or you're going to overpromise savings to leadership that you simply cannot deliver. A truly usable downtime cost figure requires exactly 4 inputs: lost production value, idle labor cost, secondary costs, and downtime duration. And the good news here is that your plant probably already has 3 of them hiding right now in your production or finance records. We just need to pull them together.
Step 1 is lost production value. Basically, you take the units you didn't produce during the stoppage and you multiply that by the contribution margin per unit. Notice I said margin, not the final sale price. Using the sale price is a huge trap because it falsely includes the cost of materials you didn't actually consume during the breakdown. Contribution margin reflects what the stoppage truly cost your bottom line. Step 2, you've got to include idle labor cost, hour for hour. Take the headcount on the affected line and multiply it by their fully loaded hourly cost. This is absolutely vital because whether your operators are just standing around waiting for a repair or they get reassigned to low-value tasks like sweeping the floor, payroll never pauses. You are still paying for that time without getting the expected production value.
Part 2. The iceberg, uncovering secondary costs.
Now we hit the iceberg effect. These secondary costs are the massive, unseen expenses lurking just beneath the surface, just waiting to sink your profitability. This is exactly where most back-of-the-envelope estimates completely fall apart. People look at direct production loss and think, okay, I have my number, but they completely forget the scrap materials caught mid-cycle, the expedited rush shipping you have to pay to meet a delivery window, the weekend overtime to claw back those lost units, and of course, those harsh contractual penalties for late deliveries.
And think about how this actually plays out in real life. It shows exactly why these secondary costs get missed. The machine breaks down at minute 0, 90 minutes later, your technicians fix the fault. The maintenance team packs up thinking the bleeding has stopped. But 3 weeks later, an invoice for expedited freight arrives on a totally different desk in a totally different department. These expenses are completely invisible on the maintenance ledger, which is why they rarely make it into the downtime calculation.
Finally, the 4th input is downtime duration. And honestly, there's a bit of a trick here. You must measure the duration from the initial stoppage all the way until the machine returns to its full production rate, not just the moment you hit the restart button. If a line is running at 60% output for 20 minutes after a repair while the process stabilizes, make no mistake, you are still losing money during that time. It's just a bit less visible.
Part 3. Avoiding common calculation errors.
Okay, so we have our definitive 4-part formula. Now let's rapid fire through some myths that will completely derail your budget meetings.
A really common question is whether to use sale price or margin. Like we touched on earlier, you absolutely must use margin. If you walk into finance with a number based on final sale price, you're artificially inflating your losses by claiming revenue on raw materials you never even used. Actually, scratch that, it's worse. You'll just instantly lose all credibility with the finance team. Always stick to the margin.
Here's another trap: mixing up downtime cost with mean time to repair, or MTTR. They are definitely related, but they are not the same thing. MTTR is a duration metric. It tells you how long the clock ran while the machine was broken. Downtime cost is a monetary figure. It tells you exactly what each of those minutes on the clock was worth in actual dollars.
Also, please don't forget about partial downtime, because it is definitely not free. If you have a bottleneck station that keeps the line moving but is only running at 50% capacity for 2 hours, you can't just ignore it. You have to calculate that as a percentage of your full output value. It's still losing half the value of 2 hours of full production.
And keep this in mind when you're calculating your ROI on maintenance improvements. Reducing downtime duration doesn't always automatically reduce costs proportionally. For instance, if you cut a 6-hour outage down to 4 hours, you might not save a clean 33% of the cost. Why? Because secondary costs like rush freight or late penalties, they often hit in the very first hour of a stoppage.
Part 4. Next steps from maintenance teams.
So, practically speaking, how do you take all this powerful data and actually justify your reliability investments? Having the right formula is only half the battle, right? Applying it correctly is what actually gets capital requests approved. To make this work, you need to build your numbers from measurable inputs, not gut feelings. Check your math against published research rather than relying on optimistic assumptions from software vendors. And importantly, run this calculation at the specific line level, every month, rather than using a single blended plant-wide average that just hides where your real problems are. And look, absolutely none of this should be done on a napkin. Every single one of these components should be actively tracked inside a structured, computerized maintenance management system, or CMMS. The source material highlights platforms like ManWinWin, which sits in a great spot between lightweight SaaS apps and those heavy, complex EM suites. Whatever system you end up using, the goal is to have this data tracked systematically rather than frantically trying to reconstruct it weeks after a breakdown.
So now that you know the true formula for uncovering these hidden costs of machine stoppages, I'll leave you with this final thought. Are you prepared to stop guessing, run the real numbers, and actually defend your downtime cost in your next budget meeting? Because once you can do that, you stop being just a maintenance expense, and you start being a strategic driver of profitability. Thanks for hanging out for this explainer, and we will catch you on the next one.